Hello everybody, welcome to this week's live stream. I'm David Jones. We do these normally every Friday, although I have been, even by my own standards, particularly lazy in August. I haven't done these for a few weeks, so I thought we'd get back into the swing of it. Again, lots to talk about today. I'm on a bit of a tight schedule this afternoon, so I have to whiz through some stuff. So we'll spend as much time, most of the session, on the markets, but let's just get the housekeeping out of the way. This presentation is only for educational purposes. It does not contain and should not be construed as containing investment advice or an investment recommendation or an offer of or solicitation for a transaction in any financial instrument. David Jones accepts no responsibility for any use that may be made of these comments and for any consequences that result. You should consider whether you understand how spread bets, CFDs, futures, foreign exchange work, and whether you can afford to take the high risk of losing your money. Trading is risky. As usual, the way we'll do it today, we'll take a look at the major markets, indices, commodities, metals, some FX pairs, all that sort of stuff. Then if there's any markets you want looking at, if you put it into the chat, we'll go through and take a look at those. Before we do all that, let's just take a look at the major stuff for next week. There's quite a lot going on next week. Obviously, in the UK at least, it's a holiday on Monday, but things really start from Wednesday. So Wednesday, we've got Aussie inflation data out on Wednesday. Inflation is still, I think, a theme for investors and traders around the world. We've got US GDP data out Wednesday. How well or not is the US economy doing? Thursday, we've got EU inflation, Eurozone CPI. I think it's just over 5% the forecast, isn't it? I think it's 5.2, 5.3%, something like that, the expectation for the European consumer price inflation thing. And then Friday is the big one, non-farm payrolls, traditionally the big one anyway, the US unemployment numbers. So they come out next Friday, so I should be around next Friday. So we'll do the live session at 2:30 as usual, about an hour after those payroll numbers come out. A very quick word from my sponsor, which is me. I'm going to whiz through this. I do a trading course. You can find all the details on the website. Been running it for a few years. Medium-term trading, short-term trading, live webinars, WhatsApp group, all the stuff. It's on the website. I did this public trading thing from November to January last year. The details of that are on the website. That was up. Started off with a $4,000 account. 2,200 just under in closed profits by the end of Jan. I did it again from the 1st of May to the 31st of July. Started off with, what was it? Was it a $5,000? A $5,000 account. And the P&L, the booked P&L was 3,116 over that period. I haven't put those full details up yet. I will do them. Win rate was 58%, which is pretty typical for my trading. Risk reward was 1.25, blah, blah, blah. You can join the WhatsApp group separately. You used to have to join the course to join the WhatsApp group. I've opened it up to a wider audience. If you want to, you can try the WhatsApp group out for a month. If you use the code YouTube when you sign up, you will get a 20% discount on the first month. And it's all in my website, on my website, which is davidjonestrading.co.uk. So to see the performance, go to performance, obviously, and you can scroll down and see all the stuff in there, the trading performance, the breakdown of the trades. Course details are in there. WhatsApp and other bits are in there for you to subscribe to. And that is it, I think. That's a snapshot of what the WhatsApp group looks like. If you can hear the Hoover going in the background, the cleaners have arrived a bit late today. So that's, apologise for any background noise. That's what the WhatsApp group looks like. So I just push out, my thoughts on the day, what trades I've got, levels I'm looking at, and any questions and all of that. And there's also a newsletter I send out. I should send it out every week. I don't think I sent it out for a few weeks. Again, suffering a bit from the feet up syndrome in August, but that will go. That's free. And if you go to the home page of the website, you can sign up for the newsletter in there, and that will start again from probably not this weekend, but next weekend. I'll start sending that out again, a snapshot of what's going on in the markets, what am I trading, what looks interesting, and a trading tip. And it's all on the website, www.commodities.co.uk. Link, as usual, in the description. Okay, that's it. Let's get into it. I've had a losing month this month. It's been my first losing month since February of this year. But just, hopefully, I'm quite open about the realities of trading. It's not all unicorns and fairy dust. So it's been a frustrating month this month. This week's been a bit better, but still down overall, slightly down overall for the month, giving back part of July's profits. And I think there's maybe a few reasons for that. I've missed out on some good opportunities by second guessing myself, which is something I rarely do, but I've missed out on some good trades there. I was really being caught the wrong way on this stock market move this week. I didn't think we were going to see a move like this in stock markets so quickly, a turnaround. Long-term trend is up, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't think we'd seen it turn around so quickly. But anyways, this month is slightly down. For me, statistically, there are typically 3 losing months in a year. So I've had at least 3. So I've had February, August. So there's at least one more to come by my reckoning before the end of the year. But let's see. So it's been a bit of a frustrating month for me from a trading point of view. But as usual, we can't blame the markets. We have to look inside ourselves. And I perhaps haven't. I've been a little bit out of step, it's felt, with some markets this month. So clean slate. I'm back into it next week. But let's kick things off with stock markets. I put this on the WhatsApp group today. I think it's going to be a really interesting finish this afternoon for US markets and other stock markets. We've had this trend. This is the NASDAQ. We've had this trend in the NASDAQ all this year. The market peaked so far, end of July, 20th of July, at 15.8 and sold off to 14,500 by Friday, but this time last week. So we saw the market drop back 1,300 points. It's the biggest sell-off, peak to trough, that we've had this year, or perhaps equal in size, in point size, is this sell-off here from Feb into March. So it's quite a big sell-off by this year's standards in the NASDAQ. But of course, we're still within this overall trend. The trend is still up. So for me, for now, I did go short early this week, not the NASDAQ, short the DAX. I'd be looking to be a buyer down here. And for me, if I was a buyer today at 14,870, wherever it's trading now, the absolute closest I'm going to have my stop is the other side of, Friday's low. And if we flip this over to the hourlies, there we go. So it's quite interesting this, because we had the low on Friday, this time last week, at 14,550. Massive rally into yesterday, 15.4, something like that, 15,360. And then a big collapse back to where we were on Monday. So if you believed the turnaround, then today we've got the opportunity to buy at Monday's prices. So I think it's interesting. But like I say, the absolute closest my stop will go is the other side of 14,500. So interesting to see where it finishes today. Trend is still up. I am by the dips, or the usual. It went oversold. First time the 10-day RSI has been oversold this year on the NASDAQ. We've got to go back to December, end of December 22. So it's interesting, really interesting. I mean, obviously, if the market starts crumbling much below, the level I would pick up on, probably 14.2, let's say. If it starts crumbling much below that, I worry that we were seeing a trend reversal. But for now, big trend is still up on the NASDAQ. Let's take a look at the US. The S&P, sorry. Same old doodah story on the S&P, really. So if we pick up on this trend, blinking heck. If we pick on this trend since October 22, like something like that, we're well above that trend on the old S&P. We're above this important-ish support from June. So again, it looks like a buy the dip to me, the S&P. The closest I'd have my stop, again, it's tying up with this last Friday low, around about 43.35, 43.30, that sort of area. But interesting to see where it finishes, see what happens there. So that's the S&P, still bullish for me, buy the dip, or the usual. DAX, I went short the DAX this week. It did all right for a bit. I went short. When did I go short? Monday or Tuesday. I think I was short in here, so I did all right. And then it just sort of ramped higher, got stopped out, and the thing did collapse yesterday. Bit choppier since then, but let's have a look on the daily charts. It's a similar setup on the DAX. Okay, if you pick up on this trend line from here, from December last year, so this year's trend basically. Okay, we've fallen out of this year's trend, but as I often say with trend lines, I always give them one last chance. So for me, I'd be a buyer, and the big level 15,450, the lows from July on the dailies. So again, just quite interesting to see where all of these markets finish up today. The FTSE came back to the lows for the year in August, middle of August. Lows for the year were from March, 7,200. Came back to it middle of August, and we've had a decent rally off that, but fairly directionless, as you can see, for the year so far, the FTSE. And the Japanese, the Nikkei, what does that look like? I mean, arguably, if you compared it to the S&P, the Nasdaq, and the DAX, it looks the least strong, but I'd still be tempted to be a buyer. We've been a little bit sideways on the Nikkei now for the best part of 5 weeks or so, maybe a bit longer. But I'd be tempted to be a buyer, give it one last chance above 31,000. Let's see what happens. So that for me is very much the focus for the rest of the day, is these US indices. What goes on with these markets ahead of last Friday's low. So that's probably all I'm bothered about this afternoon in my lazy August mode. But looking at other markets, I did do a trade on the dollar index this week. I bought the dollar index earlier in the week, Monday or Tuesday. That was a good trade. It's interesting, the trend is still up. It's been a good run in this dollar index. I need to adjust that trend line a bit. Some strange moves this week, it's got to be said. But interesting to see what happens next week. Are we going to see it run into problems again ahead of 105, 104.60, 105, whatever. But in the short term, at least, that's the hourly trend. So I bought here Tuesday. I bought on Tuesday around just above 103 and came out of it 103.80, something like that. Could have bought back in again, didn't, because I was faffing about with something else. But the market ran away again yesterday. I mean, that still looks pretty bullish to me, the dollar index. But let's see what happens when we run up to, first of all, these old levels from the end of May, 104.70. Another interesting one to watch going into next week. Dollar yen, I haven't looked at that much. I've still got a dollar yen trade on from, is it March or April? I can't remember. It is my longest running trade at the moment. So I've been long dollar yen. I mean, that to me, we've had quite a bit of short-term chop over the last week. The big trend is up though, and it broke out middle of August to new highs, best levels since November last year. I'd be buy the dip on dollar yen, perhaps not buy the dip up here, or perhaps not buy it up here until we get a breakout or something. But interesting one to watch. Euro dollar. See, I thought it was almost textbook, this setup in euro dollar this week. Let's go back to it. There we go. Let's go back to Monday, I think that is. Monday on euro against the dollar. So we had this trend since September last year. Trend. Breaks out, holds above the old lows with a bullish candlestick. And I thought, well, maybe we're going to see the euro gain a bit of ground here. But of course, because we've had the dollar strength, it's not the case. We've seen the euro slip back to its lowest for a couple of months. So is the euro trend over? Is the uptrend in the euro over? I would be willing to give it one last go, be a buyer one last time in euro US dollar. Let's see what happens next week. 106 is the big level for me, a couple of 100 points below where we are now. Let's see what happens. If this US dollar, of course, starts to run out of steam, then the euro is going to turn. You'd expect the euro to turn anyway. So interesting, but clearly dollar strength keeping a lot of these markets down. Pound against the dollar. I think it's been a confusing market. I did make a bit of money. Look at all the stupid lines I've got on the chart. I did make a bit of money short the other week, but it's been really scrappy. Although it has, started breaking down over the last day and a half. On the dailies, Let's get rid of all the lines. You know, what would you say in the dailies? If you took the trend from down here, it looks something like that. And again, is it really breaking down, or is it just having a false break? Tricky market for me at this level. I'd be inclined to give it one last chance and be a buyer when it stops going down, but it's still going down at the moment, and we're at the lowest for a couple of months. So I think, you know, this dollar, pound against the dollar, euro dollar, all that sort of stuff is an interesting one going into next week as well. Taking the dollar out of the equation, the other market I think is interesting. I mentioned it in a WhatsApp group yesterday, is sterling against the yen. So pound against the yen. We've had this big trend, or a trend, for much of this year. It punched out to new highs for the trend this week. So we were at the highest in 7.5 years. And I was, on the dailies, I was looking to buy the dip. It's arguably a dip buy, sterling yen, if you fancied it. You know, we've had hits the level, sells off, breaks out, pulls back, and stabilizes. If I was a buyer, I mean, the absolute closest I would have my stop is underneath the Wednesday low, 183.30 or thereabouts. I would probably have it wider. But I think that's an interesting market because sterling has broken out to new highs against the yen. Let's see, interesting one to watch next week, taking the US dollar out of the equation. Let's take a look at crude oil. I've been lucky in the crude oil trade. I'm long crude oil. Bought it early in the week and just avoided getting stopped out on this break. But looking at the dailies, it's still really boring, crude. You know, we've got this chart is going back to December. So it's 8-9 months. And it's just sideways, isn't it? So, you know, I don't really have an opinion on the more medium term. You know, this 84 zone has been a problem, and it's currently trading $80.40. You know, are we going to see crude oil start to run out of steam? I don't know. On the hourlies, I'm in the trade on the hourlies. I think it's all been a bit too scrappy for me this week. I'm still in the trade. I'm slightly ahead. I think I bought it back here. No, I didn't. That was Friday. I would have bought it. I bought it in here somewhere late on Tuesday. So ever so slightly ahead. Bit of a scrappy market for me this week. So I'm long, but not really convinced either way on that one. Natural gas, the old favourite. Natural gas has been edging lower for much of the last week or two. Another interesting one next week. You know, we're back to the base since the third week of June, around about $2.40 for natural gas. So what do you reckon? Bounce or bust time? You know, I suppose if you wanted to do a trade, you know, there's an argument to be a buyer with stops under $2.40. You know, you can see it. There you go. You can see it really clearly there, can't you? That support in natural gas that's held the price up. Let's see what happens next week in the price of natural gas. Let's take a look at gold and silver. Silver's a good example, actually. I should have taken the trade on silver. Didn't take it. Second guessed myself on silver. Textbook trade on silver. On the daily charts, the market since September of last year been trending higher. All good. We had the pullback last week, held above the old lows, though that 22 level had been quite important on silver back in June. And we've had this good move, had this 10% move off the support. We're still in that trend, blah blah blah. You know, for me it's still a buy the dip market, silver, as long as 22 holds. So that's been a really interesting market, I think, but a trade I didn't do and should have done. Gold, I think this is a bit quieter. It's a tricky market, I think, gold. I mean, for me anyway. I mean, there was an argument about a week ago to be a buyer or a seller, I thought. But, you know, we had this trend, and then I wondered, okay, it's come out of the trend, but are we going to have another go? Had a little go, but then slipped. Last week, slipped to its worst levels since March. But then we never really got any follow-through. And this is the hourly chart now, it spent a few days, end of last week, beginning of this, holding above 1885. You know, and I was saying that there's a couple of ideas here. You'd be a seller if 1885 breaks, or be a buyer if we get a bit of strength. In the end, it went round to the upside, but it's all a bit scrappy for me. I don't know, you could absolutely take the view that this correction, if we call it a correction in gold, is over. The slide that we've had since the third week of July is over. So going into next week, you absolutely could make the argument you want to be a buyer of the dip. I would make that argument, actually. There you go. That's what I would do next week. I'd buy the dip in gold. The only question is, where does your stop go? So for me, I would still want my stop the other side of these old lows, 1884 lows from the 21st of August. So yeah, I think that's an interesting one to watch next week. And it's only $30 away from where it is now. Let's see what happens. Interesting if we get perhaps a bit of a sell-off next week, back to the low 1900s, bit of stability, blah, blah, blah. Let's see where we go from there. So yeah, that's that interesting one to watch next week. What else haven't we done? Bitcoin. We had that swan dive in Bitcoin, didn't we? End of last week, went from 29 down to 25. The trend is still up on Bitcoin. It does this, doesn't it? As we know, we get sharp move, then it just dies and goes sideways for ages, and then a sharp move again. I'd still be buy the dips on Bitcoin. I say that theoretically because I don't really trade Bitcoin. I'd still be buy the dips on Bitcoin. Give it a bit of room because it's a bit of a crazy market. Perhaps be a buyer at 26 with a stop at 23 or 22 and a half or something. Let's see what happens. So yeah, that's Bitcoin. So what to watch? Well, for me, this Nasdaq is getting a move on. US indices. Do we see at least some of these yesterday's sell-off clawed back? I think it's interesting because the trends are still up. So that for me is probably the big focus at the moment, these indices. The likes of the dollar index, because it is still strong, but we are running into some problems. Potentially, I should say, running into some problems, not much higher than here. Let's see what happens. And gold, do we quite fancy buying the dip on gold next week? If we get a dip, let's see. Let's see what happens. I think that does look like an interesting market. And then there's stuff like oil I don't have any opinion on, even though I've got a trade on. I've got no opinion. I think I'm lucky to still be in the trade. I'm long. Let's see what happens. It did rally off these old lows pretty quick. These spiky moves down we had Wednesday, Thursday, oil. But I'm a bit non-committal on that. So for me, it's probably all about stock markets for today. And let's see where we are next week. So that is the old doodah. That's the usual markets. We'll now jump into any stuff you want looking at. Don't forget to find out more about the trading course, the WhatsApp group, the free newsletter that I indiscriminately send out. Go to the website, davidjonestrading.co.uk. You can contact me from there as well. If you've got any questions about courses and stuff like that, you can drop me an email or send me a contact form thing from the website, and all the links are in the description. Right, let's have a look at the stuff you would like to look at. Let's go back through the questions. Sterling Aussie. It was an interesting market, Sterling Aussie, I thought. So let's bring that up. So the pound against the Aussie dollar. Good trend on that. If I go back, there we go. Look at that. So a bit like sterling yen, I suppose, in a way. It's been a good year for sterling Aussie. I would buy the dip on sterling against the Australian dollar. So it traded up to 2. I did wonder if 2 would be a bit of a psychological barrier. Anyway, it traded up to 2, which is the highest it's been since April 2020. That did mark a major turning point. There's quite a lot of chop around there for sterling Aussie. Anyway, I would still be inclined to be a buyer. Probably not today, but next week. Taking the view, okay, the market has broken out, sold off a bit, and stabilised. So if I'm a buyer, where does my stop go on sterling Aussie? So for me, that's the breakout level, 193.90. I would probably want my stop the other side of these lows, whatever they are. There we go, 190. Let's call it 193. An aggressive stop would be, again for me, just under 195. But for me, I'd be wondering, are we going to see at least another push next week to 2 on the pound against the Aussie dollar? Let's see what happens. But that's an interesting market, I think, sterling Aussie. Yeah, we looked at gold and silver. Powell's speech. Yeah, that's all going on, isn't it? Crude oil. XMI. What's XMI? XMI. The major market index. Oh, we've looked at this before, haven't we? Does it look a little bit like the Dow? Or am I getting confused? Let's have a look. So the major market index broke out to new highs. Interesting. Is that new all-time highs? Yeah, that is. Okay, so this is the MMI, major market index. Let's pick up on those highs. It won't surprise you that I say I'm going to buy the dip. I'd probably rather wait for today to finish. If I was a buyer of the dip, I would have a stop at least under 3,100, those lows from June. But that's another interesting one. Clearly, it's another US stock market index. I think that's interesting to see where that ends today, where it all finishes. But the fact that it's, coming off what is an all-time high, the trend is still up since October last year. I'd be a buyer, never try and second guess the trend is one of my approaches, big approach for me. So yeah, it's an interesting one there. The IWM, small caps, okay. Small caps have lagged, the Russell lagged the large cap, says Kevin. Yeah, it's true, it's been interesting. It's not been interesting, but it is interesting that it has moved very differently, the Russell 2000, to the older, the NASDAQ or the S&P, isn't it? That's the Russell 2000, so the smaller cap, smaller stocks, US index, and pretty sideways for the last 12 months. If you bought in a year ago, you are pretty much flat on that. It's trading where it was. Bit of volatility, bit of flip-flop around, but not much direction, isn't it? I watched an old live you did. Did you give up on a 5-minute strategy course? Would it have been much different to the 1 hour? I don't know. Did I say I was going to do one? I probably did. But I think for me, I do trade. I said this in the WhatsApp group, right? I do have an account for trading off 5-minute charts, and I view it as my gambling account, right? I don't do many trades in it, 1 or 2 trades a month when I'm watching Netflix and I want to have a quick look at what the NASDAQ's doing. So I think I do dip in and out of trading on 5-minute charts, but I do think it's a mug's game, to be blunt, and I much prefer, the shortest term I go is still the hourlies. So no, I don't think there'll ever be anything on the 5 minutes. It's just a bit too frantic for me, 5-minute charts. If you look at an hourly chart, like we've been looking at today, in a few different markets, there's usually always something going on. So no, I'm not, even though I do have a dabble in the 5-minute chart, in the dark side of the 5-minute charts, no, I struggle to come up with much of a sensible strategy. It's pretty much trend following. Here's the NASDAQ, for example. No, S&P 5-minute chart. If we take it since 7:30 this morning, it has been trending higher, isn't it? You'd be buying the dips. I'll be buying the dips. So I'll be a buyer now at, let's say, 94 with a stop perhaps at 82 or something. So, but it's just requires a bit too much attention for me, the 5-minute charts, and I'm not the most attentive person. Let's guess. Tesla. Let's have a quick look at Tesla. It's been interesting. That is this actual Cybertruck thing going to see the light of day? No, because there's a lot of chat. Because he did send Mr. Musk did send out a tweet, didn't he, the other day, saying if Lego can get their engineering precision down to a certain level, then there's no reason why Tesla can't with the Cybertruck. Single-digit micron tolerance. It is an ugly-looking thing, I think, though. But at least it looks a little bit different from every other sort of boring electric car out there. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. What's it done to the stock price? Let's have a look. Not a lot, really, is it? Let's have a look on the dailies. Hang on a sec. Off by the dip. Last Friday. That's the TARDIS trade for the week. The hindsight trade of the week. Go back to last Friday and buy Tesla. I'd still be a buyer now. If I was a buyer now, where would you put your stop? So you're going to buy her at 234. And I mean, an aggressive stop would be under the Friday low. Perhaps the other side of 200 is an interesting stop on Tesla. I don't know. Maybe. But that trend is still up. That trend for this year. I mean, the share price has done really well. It's more than doubled since the low in January, the old Tesla this year. So another interesting one to keep an eye on. Never a dull moment with Tesla. Tesla. Coinbase. Buy Coinbase. Is the trend reversing? Let's have a look. So Coinbase is, of course, the old, what do we call it? Crypto platform, isn't it? Crypto platform. So it came to the market back in 2021. Traded up to about $430 a share. Currently trading at 74. See, for me, I would have to say it looks like it's still in a range. It's in a big range. Hang on. You know, it is a massive range from 30 on the lows to 116 at the highs, and it's backed off. What, $30, $40, $35 off those highs just in the last month. It's dropped 30% in the last month. You know, so I mean, it will be interesting to see, does it hold above this old range? But for me, if I looked at a chart of Tesla and looked at a chart of Coinbase, I'd rather be a buyer of Tesla because at least we've got a trend in Tesla. So Coinbase, you know, we've got this range and it's in the middle of the range. The volatility is interesting, but it's not one for me so much at the moment. Alibaba, let's have a look. The big Chinese retailer, Alibaba Group Holdings. It's all gone a bit quiet there, hasn't it? I remember it had a massive downtrend that had been following for quite some time. There we go. All the way down from October 2020 into November 2022. Broke out. It's had a bit of excitement into Jan, and it's all been a bit boring, isn't it? I'd be a buyer rather than a seller. I would want my stop, the other side of 77. So I'd be a buyer at wherever it is now, 89.60 something, with a stop at 77. But it's just a little bit boring. But that trend, to me, that trend is over. But it's just since March, it's just been a bit sideways, hasn't it, really? So, Microsoft. Let's have a look at Microsoft. Oh yes, I would. Yeah, I'd buy the dip there in Microsoft. It was good downtrend, didn't we? Since November 21, breaks it Feb 23. This is the new trend in Microsoft. Or this, you know, this has been the new trend in Microsoft. We've seen it hold 310. So again, if I was a buyer, I would be. It's currently trading at 324. I would have my stop at least under 310, if not a bit further. Interesting one. A bit like Tesla, the shape of the old price pattern. So, okay, what else have we got? Cybertruck is goofy looking, but a fan favourite. Sells for 100k, already sold out. And they are popular, aren't they? The old pickup trucks in the US, not so much in here in the UK, but over there. I bought Shop for a trade. That's Shopify. So look at Shopify a couple of days ago. That looks to me, that looks an interesting one as well. On the basis that, again, the trend is up. It's had a little wiggle through the trend, and my give it one last chance trade. If I was a buyer, I would have a stop, a conservative stop, the other side of 46, a more aggressive stop, the other side of 51. Let's see what happens. Hong Kong 50. Hong Kong 50 index. Hang on a sec, where is it? I think it's that one, isn't it? Hang Seng. Is it the Hang Seng, isn't it? I've looked at this a few times this year. I find it really confusing, you know, because if we went back to, if let's take that trend off. Right. So we had this big trend in the Hong Kong that looked like that. Breaks out in December last year, rallies, looking to buy the dip, blah, blah, blah. And then it just sort of trended lower again. So I want to buy it, but it keeps just edging a bit lower, the Hang Seng. So I think it's a difficult one for me anyway, the Hong Kong Hang Seng. If I was a buyer today, I would have a stop loss the other side of 16,800. But it just edges, and I'm sort of waiting for it to hook up and start going to 23,000 again, and it never does. So a funny one that. Apple Inc. Yeah, similar one. I got stopped out of Apple. I was long Apple. I got stopped on this break. I didn't think it was going to break that far. It went from, let's call it $200 down to 170-ish. So it dropped almost 15%. I would buy it. I wouldn't buy it today though. I'd wait for things to settle. If I was a buyer now, I would have my stop at least under 170. So maybe it's an interesting one for next week. Swiss yen seems like it's at an interesting point with regards to its trend. It's been a good market for me, Swiss yen, for a lot of this year. That is, yeah, it's a bit like sterling yen, I suppose, isn't it? So I would be a buyer of the dip because it's broken out. Sort of breakout. Look at that trend over the years. Got a breakout, I'd buy the dip. So as usual, the question is, where does your stop go? On the hourlies, I would go. Where would you go? Where would I go on the hourlies? I don't know. The other side of 164 at the closest, perhaps even a bit further away, perhaps even down below 161, 162. Sorry, the August lows. But it's interesting, you know, because it's broken out. And is it just having a bit of a pause before, ba-boom, excuse me, away it goes again? Let's see. CLS could also be a trade. What's CLS then? Celestica. What do they do? Electronic technology. Yeah, I mean, that's been really moving. I mean, that's doubled since May, hasn't it? As I often say, I do have a problem with these runaway markets. So yeah. But I don't know where I get in on that, to be honest. I know nothing about trading. How do you trade? That's a big question, that is. Go to my website. There's details on the website. Send me there is a big technical analysis video I did on the channel somewhere. It's about an hour long. You might want to have a look at that. But drop me an email. Go to the website and send me a message from the email. Obviously, you can just join the course if you want to, but I can point you to some places to perhaps do some preliminary reading. But don't worry about knowing nothing about trading. Most people know nothing about trading, which is why 75% of them lose. So you're in good company. And on that happy note, I think we're going to draw things to an end for today. I think we're done. Like I say, stock markets, interesting for me. Quite a bit of volatility in the first 40 minutes. We saw this NASDAQ run up, now it's running back down. The big question, for me anyway, do these lows from last Friday hold in the likes of the NASDAQ and the S&P? I would be sort of betting they do, but let's see what happens. Let's see what the price does. So I think that's an interesting one to watch. The dollar index, because we have this strength. Clearly, Mr. Powell has said something in the last 10 minutes because the markets have gone a bit crackers. That's interesting for next week. And that gold thing, are we going to be he has definitely said something, hasn't he? Let's have a quick look on Twitter. What's he said? Has he said that the US is going to abandon the dollar and adopt Bitcoin as their base currency? What do you reckon? Oh, I'm not logged into Twitter or X on this. I can't see it. Let's see what happens later. Okay, that's it. Long weekend in the UK. Enjoy your bank holiday, last one before Christmas. What a depressing thought that is. 4 months until another Monday off. We'll wrap things up there. Lots to watch though. But like I say, for me, stock market's the big focus this afternoon. I'll be back next Friday. We'll see where markets are after these payrolls next Friday. Let's see where it all ends today. And that's it. Go to the website to find out more. Join the WhatsApp group if you want updates throughout the day. You can try it for a month. Use the code YouTube for a discount on the first month. And that's it for today. Have a good long weekend if you've got Monday off. And see you next Friday.